Welcome everybody to tonight's program about Israel and the possibility of Arab countries making peace with Israel in our hopefully near future. I'm Sharon Leibovitz with L'Dor Va-Dor, and I welcome you all tonight for this special occasion where we have Zahi Gadish speaking, as well as Rabbi Barry Silver speaking. I'm going to start the program this evening with a lovely video, and that video is on the Israeli Defense Forces.
We are the Israel Defense Forces. For 72 years, you've heard our story. Tiny country, surrounded by enemies, surviving against all odds. You know the names of our wars, our battles, our planes, our tanks, our tech. You think you understand our success?
You know nothing. Let me tell you a secret. The key to our existence is not our weapons. It's our soldiers. Our spirit, our passion, our love.
We are an army of the people. Jews, Druze, Muslims, Christians. We are defending our homes.
We are protecting our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, our neighbors, our friends.
Where there's no road, we pave one. No bridge, we build one. No answer, we find one.
For us, no distance is too far, no ocean too vast, no mission too complicated.
We get the job done.
When our new soldiers are sworn in, they pledge, if necessary, to sacrifice their lives for Israel.
All of us, in blue, in green, in white, in beige, generals and privates, active duty and reserves, we're ready to take any risk to ensure the survival of Israel. It's an honor to have this mission today. We stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us. The men and women who started with nothing and built a powerful army that is feared by its enemies and respected by its peers. We're proud to have given new life to the Jewish people, security to all of Israel's citizens, and confidence that our best days are ahead of us. We are the Israel Defense Forces.
Now you know our secret. Happy Independence Day.
Without any further ado, I'd like to announce our speaker, Zahi Gadish. Zahi's family moved to Israel from Odessa, Ukraine in 1904. And we are pleased to have Zahi here tonight to speak with us about the Israeli Defense Forces. He's the captain, as well as Israel and the possibility of peace with the Arab countries surrounding her. Without any further ado, I'd like to announce Zahi.
Okay, Erev Tov, good evening to everyone. Zahi Gadish, my real name pronunciation, Zahi Gadish. Very hard letters in my name. However, we saw the little video actually that I got it, and I'm glad that we could, show it tonight. It really showed you the essence of the Israeli army, as we are the people's army. And since we're talking about that, and we all want peace, everyone. So before we go into the peace and what happened in the past and what will happen in the future, let me give you a little overview of numbers. I'm a number guy. I like to see the statistics. I like to see the odds and everything. So the Israeli army today, we have 9.5 million people. And our army, the regular army is 170,000 people, not a lot. 450 extra in reserve duty, everybody until age 45, 55. We have right now about 300 jets, fighter jets mainly, some of them also for cargo. We have 200 assault helicopters of all kinds. We have 2,500 tanks, 10,000 APCs, which is like a personal carrier, armored personal carrier, not really a tank. We have some patrol boats, only 45, and only 5 submarines that patrolling basically the Mediterranean, and maybe a couple of them also in the Persian Gulf, I hope. So it sounds a lot, but it's not. I'll tell you why. Egyptian army, Egypt, 100 million people. Egyptian army, 1 million. Jets, 10,000. Tanks, 20,000. Tanks, APCs, and artillery. Very bad odds. We go to Syria. Syria is 20 million people, 150,000 army, 500 jets and copters, 10,000 tanks, etc. Jordan, a small country, but still have 11 million people. They have 200,000 army, 300,000 jets, and they have 4,000 tanks, artillery, etc. We have to remember that in Jordan, 60 to 70% of the population are Palestinian or people that live there for many years. So politically, it's very fragile for King Abdullah. Lebanon, 6 million people, kind of small army because they don't have much control, 75,000, 70 jets, 3,000 tanks. But Hezbollah, which is a terrorist organization that sits on the border of Israel in the north of Lebanon, there are 5,000 terrorist warriors, and I don't want to say how much, but hundreds of thousands of rockets of all kinds, just ready to push the button. So you're talking about 1.5 million type of army, and that without Iran. So Syria, don't forget, we have also in Syria the Iranian. Iran itself is 85 million people, huge army, almost 1,000, almost 1 million people. I won't go into all the hundreds and thousands of tanks and everything. They're threats to us. We're trying to get them out of South Syria and Eastern Syria, and some other people as well. So you can see that Israel is really surrounded by hostile countries, even if we have peace with Jordan, so-called, and with Egypt, a little better. I'll get to it in a second. So that's what it is. The issues is, of course, the issues of peace is we have settlements in the territories. Some people call it occupied. Some people call it liberated. It's rid of your politics. So we have about 500,000 Israelis really living in this area. And of course, they have a lot of Palestinians around them. So we have some problems on that. We have the Jerusalem, Har HaBayit is a problem, our borders, we have water rights, and we have Israeli Arabs that, you know, are Israelis, but you never know what his alignment will be when Israel will be attacked. So let's go to peace treaties. What happened in peace treaties? 1977, Anwar el-Sadat was the president of Egypt, decided that enough is enough. He was strong enough, and he decided to make peace with Israel. Yitzhak Rabin was there at the time. Before that was Begin. So we have, actually, I was in the Sinai Desert, as some of you knew from my other past talking. So I was on the Suez Canal. I was in 2 wars, in 67 and in Yom Kippur, 73. So I knew the desert like I know my neighborhood now here, even better maybe. So I've been everywhere, from Mount Sinai to every place that mentioned in the Torah, you know, Refidim, Sukkot, places like that, which were oases actually at the time. So Egypt peace is good. In 79, I happened to be in the reserve, and I was in a force that called disengagement of forces, including the American army that helped a lot at the time. So since my English was better than most Israeli officers, they volunteered me to be there. And they said, no, you'll be one of the liaison officers with American troops. That went very well. First time that, you know, we saw really the massive American, you know-how and aids and all kind of accessories. So the relationship are pretty good. Actually, I took a trip in 1980 to Egypt with a friend of mine. He came from Brooklyn, and he was like me, Egyptologist. We like Egypt and all the antiquities, and I knew a lot about the pharaohs. And so we took a long trip of few weeks. And I must say that I was welcomed in the shuk, in the markets of Cairo, and went down to Aswan, all the way down to the south. Abu Simbel, and the trains, so they welcome us. Today, I don't know if I'll say that I'm Israeli, most probably I'll say I'm from Switzerland, you know, can be more neutral than that. French, oh la la, or, you know, German, Jawohl. So, you know, I could manage to be a Swiss for a while. So this is the peace with Egypt. In Jordan, 1994, the famous King Hussein, Yitzhak Rabin, and everybody shaking hands, Shimon Peres, King Hussein that appreciate Israel saving his tuches many times against all kind of assassinations, was very aligned. His son today, Abdallah, under heavy pressure from Palestinian majority in his country, so he cannot talk too much about you know, having a peace with Israel. We still have cooperation, mainly water and some other type of help that we help them. Of course, we have a lot of intelligent information going between, you know, the king himself and our guys. Palestinian peace is, you all recalled, 1993, also Rabin, Arafat, big pictures, people, you know, clutching hands and saying Mabruk, Shalom, Salam, everything was big, but it really never worked. We tried to give them everything that they asked. It still didn't go. Camp David, 2000, we were there. I think Clinton was at the time there in the beginning. Ehud Barak was at the time talking to Arafat and actually giving the land of Israel, 99% of it, and trying to switch some land. Luckily for us, it were rejected by the PLO radicals, which Arafat was one of them, even if he was trying to look like a peacemaker. So it didn't work at all. So this is the attempt of peace talks. Today, we still want to negotiate, but nobody wants to come to the table. Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, as he called, is so-called the PLO leader. But you have to remember, in the last 15 years, there were no election whatsoever in the Palestinian territories. So we really don't know who control whom. That's very important if we talk about peace. With whom do you make peace? We know we make peace with enemies, not with friends. But still, if your enemy is still advocating destruction of your own country, whatever we'll do will be a suicide. And we have done that, you know, 70 years ago and everything in the Holocaust and some other places in Arab lands where Jews were just slaughtered. So we are not going to do this right now. I want to, like everybody else, the best thing is to be home, read the book, be with the family, go to a barbecue. But our enemies, or our neighbors, we'll call them, not really enemies, they don't like that idea. A lot of reasons from political, mainly it's religious problems. You have a lot of Shiite Muslims that they are hardcore, that they fight each other, they kill Sunnis, they kill Alawi, and vice versa, they kill each other. So for them to kill Israelis is actually easier than anything else. And we all infidel, if you're Christian, Jew, or Baha'i, or anything else, it's okay, it's kosher to kill the guy because you don't believe in Islam. So if Islam kill Islamists, they're gonna kill us. So as the rabbi, always a peacemaker, a peacenik, as we used to call them in Israel, is a peacenik, and I like that. I'm myself actually a big peacenik. All my family, by the way, they all, you know, will vote with Barry Silver in any election. So my family really got enough of wars, and they're really peacenik, even if we all served in the military, women included. Mostly we're all officers, so once we do our service, you know, we do it like we have to defend the country. Once we go out of the service, we can become anti whatever we want or pro peace. So that's basically the overview of what's going on, what has been done so far. Also want to say something about the corona. Luckily, Israel had only 264 dead people of 10 million people almost in Israel. This is really a record compared to Sweden, 10 million people that are 3,000, and other countries that similar to it. So Israel really got isolated very quickly in the beginning. As of today, and actually Sunday after Shabbat, they're going to open, all the malls going to be open and everything with restrictions, but the country will be open so we can go back to work and start earning a living and not be unemployed like what's going on here and many other European countries that don't know how to get back to work. So, you know, that's what it is. The good news in Israel that it's declining and less people getting sick and more people getting through to Corona. So that's basically what we want. We want shalom, and we will work for shalom, because war really solves nothing. But you have to bring the people to the table. Barry, wo suchst du? מה אתה אומר? Go ahead,
אני
Barry.
אני מסכים איתך.
Okay, we agree to agree. So that's
כן.
even...
גם אני רוצה שלום. So anyway, I was saying I agree with Tzachi. I appreciate him explaining to us how to pronounce his name, and also some very important things about Israel. Before I start my comments, I just have to say my yarmulke is off to Tzachi. I have so much respect for him, for doing tremendous work to protect the state of Israel and for keeping the Jewish state alive. He represents and exemplifies the heroic nature of the Jewish people, but also the fact that in the Israeli army, they are not just fighting machines. They're very highly educated people. They're trained in religion and Torah and history, and in compassion, in not just going around killing people, but they show more restraint than any other country, especially considering that they have surrounding nations that just want to destroy them and say the most hideous, barbaric, vicious things against them. And the Israeli Defense Forces is just seeks peace. And the PR for the IDF is well, it's shameful the way they're vilified by many people. And I just want everyone to know that Israel has given up land for peace and has done everything they could to try to make peace. And so I'm 100% on the same page at Tzachi, and I happen to agree with Benjamin Netanyahu in many regards, especially when he said, do not think that I would be the last one that would want to have a two-state solution. I would be the first one. I would be the first one to want a two-state solution. I would love to have peace with a Palestinian state if there was a Palestinian state that was actually viable and that was committed to living in peace and not trying to destroy us. And as soon as there is such a place, I'll be glad to recognize a Palestinian state. But right now, it's not that, and I seek peace, but I understand that you can't make peace with people who are trying to destroy you. It's like, if you're a peaceful person and there's a rabid dog who's trying to kill you and wants to attack you, you would be foolhardy to go up to the dog and to try to shake its paw. That would be ridiculous. You have to protect yourself. And that's pretty much what we're dealing with Israel. There are people who are brainwashed, who are just vicious, who are trying to attack Israel. Not all the Muslims, obviously. Not all the Muslim countries, obviously. But the people who are driving the train, the people who are in control, and the religious fanatics, they're implacable, and they're not the type of people that you can deal with. Fortunately, there are some rational people within the Muslim world, and Israel does everything they can to reach out for them, to them. So I think that I do not believe that as some people do, oh, we'll never have peace with the Palestinians. They're just violent people. There's nothing genetically about a Palestinian that is violent. In fact, in the early days when the Tzachi's family arrived in Palestine, what it was called then, the Jews and the Palestinians were getting along pretty well. They were doing all right. They had a common enemy, the British, and they were doing okay. What happened was they became radicalized, and the peacemakers among them were killed off. And so we're left with very violent people around. That does not mean that they can't make peace or that the people itself is incapable. They're trapped in a very bad ideology. And for those people who say, we'll never have peace with the Palestinians, look what they've done. I remind you, look at Nazi Germany. I mean, they were pretty nasty too. I mean, this was evil personified. And now we have cordial relations with them. Look at Japan and how vicious they were to the Chinese and to the United States. I mean, they were barbaric, but then they changed. To say that we're always going to be at war is just it's foolhardy, and it ignores history. People think they're being very realistic. Oh, I'm a realist. I know we're never going to have peace. Being cynical and thinking that there's no possibility of change is not realistic, because realistically we recognize that people change and nations change too. What I'd like to add to the discussion, and then we can move on, and I want to ask Tzachi a few questions, because we always like to exchange views and get into things where there's difference of opinion. I don't want to have too much of a love fest where we agree on everything, although that's a good thing. Let me just share my personal take on this as far as peace with the Arab world. I believe that in Israel today, we have two religions that are in conflict, Judaism and Islam. Both of them have a militant right-wing aspect to them, and they also have a more moderate wing. Unfortunately, in Islam, there's no such thing as reform Islam, meaning Muslims who don't take the Quran as God's word. If you don't take the Quran as God's word, pretty much you're not a Muslim, and if you live in the Muslim country, you'll be killed if you go around saying that. If you go around in Egypt or in Syria saying, hey, I don't think God wrote the Quran, I think some human being did, you're not going to be able to get an insurance policy very easily. That's not a healthy thing to do. So reform doesn't exist. In the Quran, there are clear statements to kill the non-believer. Now, the Jews are given a benefit of the doubt. We're people of the book, but in other verses, we're not given any benefit at all. We need to be killed. And those passages have found their way into the PLO Charter and into the minds of many surrounding countries. So when you have that belief system from the Quran that God mandated you to kill non-believers and this is Muslim land, you don't have much prospect for peace. Sadly, in Israel, you have people who have the exact same mentality. They just worship a different book. They say, no, the Quran's not God's word. They didn't tell it. It doesn't say that. God didn't say that Israel belongs to the Muslims. The Torah is God's word. And it says that Israel belongs to the Jewish people. Instead, now you have two peoples fighting over ancient literature, over whose imaginary God in the sky is telling you that the land is theirs. You'll never have peace with that. You'll never have peace as long as those factions prevail. The only hope is to have moderate religions, a moderate form of Judaism, which says that the Torah is not God's word. It was written by people trying to understand God, and it didn't get all of it right. And let me conclude with this, and then we'll take questions and comments, and then I'll ask Tzachi my questions. The people on the right-wing Jews, they insist God gave Israel to the Jewish people. Their claim for a Jewish state is God gave it to us. And that is a really horrible reason. First of all, you can't prove it. Secondly, it's not true. And thirdly, it's the same claim that the Muslims are making about Israel. No, God gave it to us. And then the Christians say, well, you both got it wrong. Actually, Israel's going to be in an Armageddon, a horrible conflict, and then Jesus is coming back. So we're going to back Israel for now because that suits our interests, and we think the Jews belong there so that Armageddon can happen. And then they're all going to hell too. These are not good philosophies for peace. What we need to do is say to the world, the Jewish people, get off of this kick that God gave us the land. There's much better reasons why the Jewish people have a stake and an interest and a claim to the state of Israel. Number one, the Jewish people gave the religion of Muslims and Christians to them. We preserved monotheism, we created monotheism, we engendered monotheism, and people borrowed monotheism. Muslims and Christians owe their religion to the Jewish people. So as some type of appreciation for that, they should understand that there should be one Jewish state in the world. There's dozens of Muslim countries. We who gave monotheism to the world and their religions, we deserve one Jewish state. Number two, we have an historic claim to Israel. Jerusalem was our capital. We've been there for thousands of years. It is the homeland of the Jewish people. We've been in exile, but we've always yearned to be in Israel. It is our homeland. It is not the homeland of the Muslim people. There never even was a state of Palestine that was Muslim. It's the Jewish homeland, historically, religiously, morally. Number three, the world has demonstrated that they are incapable of creating a world that is safe for Jewish people. Yes, the United States is safe for Jews right now. Yes, Germany was safe for Jews at one time too. So was Poland. So was Egypt. But there's no country where Jews can feel safe and secure forever. We have to have one little place. And after the Holocaust, the world owes it to the Jewish people to grant them one place. Number 4, Israel is a bastion of democracy and helps the United States keep the world safe. It is fighting against terrorism with the United States. Also, it's the only place in the Middle East where all the religions are respected. Baha'i has a holy place there, Christianity does, Islam does, the Jews do, and they're all respected. Freedom of religion is valuable because the holy sites of those religions are there. And if these holy sites were in another country, like a Muslim country, they would not be respected. So it's in the best interest of the people of the world and for religious freedom to have Israel in Jewish hands. Because if it's not in Jewish hands, it was controlled by Muslims, it would be all over. Number 5, Israel has incredible technology and is sharing that technology and benefiting the countries of the world. It shares its blessings and its benefits and its knowledge with the people of the world. This is a claim that Israel can make, that we benefit humanity by being here. There are many other such claims also, but I hope that all Jews, including the right wing, will cling to those valid reasons instead of coming up with mythological ones, because those claims are not going to make it. Now, I want to ask Tzachi something. Tzachi and I agree on many things, and some things we don't, and that's fine. We don't have to just get along with people that we agree with. I want to ask Tzachi something. You mentioned that Carter, you said that Sadat decided to make peace with Israel. Well, part of the reason why he decided that was because President Carter went to extraordinary lengths to bang heads together. Sadat was not interested. Begin was not too interested. He brought him to Camp David. He brought their heads together, and they still weren't interested, and they were going to walk out. He went to extraordinary lengths to make peace, but he is vilified by the right wing. Now, personally, I have my problems with Carter. He took money from Saudi Arabia to build up his Carter library or whatever, and then sold out Israel. I'm not a fan of Carter. I don't like the guy. I think what he did was vile, but still, should not he be credited with going to extraordinary lengths in his better days of creating peace? Also, the right wing has been responsible for the assassination of Rabin. The right wing also praised the Baruch Goldstein, who went around slaughtering people, and then they put up a shrine in his honor because they thought it was so great that he killed Muslims. This was a disgrace and a shame. The right wing has to recognize that it has to support liberal progressive Judaism as well. They opposed Israel in the beginning. The Orthodox opposed Israel, and now they take it over, and now they want to exclude other people. Similarly, the left wing, the liberals, has to recognize that if you want to see a place that respects civil rights, that's Israel. And so the people like the Squad should be condemned in much stronger language than they are. The Democratic Party must condemn these people and say, if you're liberal, if you believe in women's rights, equal rights, freedom of religion, you should be the passionate supporters of Israel. And so I want to ask Tzachi if he thinks that perhaps politics is harming the state of Israel by having right-wing people just line up politically and left-wing people line up politically and not placing Israel and the state of Israel. Because if we use Israel as a whipping boy against the other party, that is not going to help Israel. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Okay, very nice. Sounds like a medium sermon, but you're right. First of all, let's talk about the right-wing fanatics. By numbers, they're very, very little. It's not the people that the right wing that align with Bibi Netanyahu. So right now, actually, as we swearing a new government, the right wing religious party actually is out of the government, Bennett, etc. So really, there's no right wing anymore in Israel. It's all split, almost like the left, but more pronounced with the right. So we got rid of the religious party that really, like you said, they want to be fanatic and wave the God's, flag. It's ours and nobody else. And then that's why he did it. That's why it was hard to make a government, because you need them for coalition. But somehow Bibi, a smart guy, soon to be convicted most probably on some unrelated things for politics, unfortunately. But he's still going to be the prime minister for the next year and a half or so. That was the deal. And so the right wing that you're talking about, I really won't be now. They'll be sitting in the opposition, as we say, oppositia, and they can shout from the back benches. And you're right. most people still believe that God gave us the land because it says in the book. So if you believe a book, like you said many times, say it's only a book. It's written by many people, obviously, because there's different style, different times of history. But we do have a long history. Jerusalem is known at least as Yevus and Yeshurun and some others for 35, almost 100 years, so more than 3,000 years before Islam, before Christianity, before everything. Jews were always in Jerusalem and in Israel, Peki'in and some other places that we never left, Tiberia, Tzefat. So to say about Egypt, you write about Carter. Also problematic was that Begin was very weak at the time. Israel Prime Minister Menachem Begin was a very good fighter in the War of Independence with the Etzel and troublemaker for the British. But when he went to Camp David, or when he went with Carter and Sadat, he was heavily leaned by Carter, like you said. He was very tough and didn't like the Jews so much, a farmer from wherever he came from, a peanut farmer. So he didn't like exactly the Yiddelach, especially he never met most probably anyone until he came to Washington. I mean, so not that many Jews they're dealing with peanuts. So we deal with pistachios, more money. So basically what happened is that unfortunately he signed a very bad peace that, they wanted to take all the desert, but they left us Gaza. And he was not strong enough. He said, if you want all the desert, you take also Gaza. And the people of Gaza, that now are the troublemakers in the southern borders, should be Egyptian. But Egypt said no, and kind of Carter was leaning on begging sign before Sadat running home, So he signed it, and that's how we stuck now with almost 2 million crazy, hungry, whatever you call them, poor guys, to say the least, in Gaza, controlled by a few thousand of Hamas radicals, that if you speak against them, you'll be dead and your family. So even moderate Arabs cannot say anything. And if they do, they most probably have to leave the area, and disappear. If not, they'll disappear by force. So, the right wing in Israel, I think that Israel is ready now, especially with the corona now. You see how people are so vulnerable. So I guess people are going to get a bit more tired and said, you know what, let's give peace a chance, the John Lennon song and everything. So let's give peace a chance. And, we try, like you said, we try to quiet down a little bit the religious parties. I think that a two people state, or, 2 states for 2 people might work, although it will have to be coordinated with Jordan because they have the main territory and everything like that. They gave up the West Bank very quickly after 67. King Hussein was smart enough. He said, we don't want those Palestinians, give it back to Israel. So the same thing, same thing. The Arabs don't like the Palestinians. Egypt gave it up. Lebanon gave it up. And Jordan gave it up. So we got stuck with people that now blaming us for their problems and not their brethren that really abandoned them and don't even help them. Without Israel, the Gaza will not last 1 more month. I mean, it's so obvious. Even if we fight them and they fight us, we still have every day we give them food, medicine, water, everything. You should see what's going on in those passing borders, pass control area there. And it's unbelievable how many trucks going full over there and coming back empty home. I mean, it's really ridiculous. But unfortunately, Hamas is controlling it very badly, and nobody can do a thing. If you talk to Israel, you're a gunner. So that's how it looks, We have to work hard on it.
Tzachi, I wanted to ask you about the Kurds. What do you think about the fact that we abandoned the Kurds? They're allies of Israel, right? And they joined us in the fighting of ISIS. How do you feel about that?
We first of all, we did not abandon the Kurds. We toned down our presence and everything. We still have people that are Kurdish, Jewish people, the intelligent officers and everything. We always coordinate with them. We give them all kinds of weapons and other things and intelligent report. Don't forget that the Kurds they're stateless, like we were many years ago. So they also will need a state. Unfortunately, they are divided between Turkey, Iraq, and Syria on the borders, So in this area, they really don't have much control. Also, they control some other type of land that have a lot of oil and other type of things. So of course, everybody wants to take it from them. So we really didn't abandon them, but we had to tone down our activities, there, because we didn't want to fight Turkey again, So
but Tzachi, the United States told Turkey, come on into the Kurdish areas in Iraq. They gave them the green light and said, go ahead, come in. And they came in and slaughtered people and took back territory that the Kurds had taken from ISIS with our help. They didn't abandon every single Kurd. Yes, they're still working with them, but in that particular area, we just stepped back and said, go ahead, have at it. And are you concerned that people would be afraid to ally themselves with us? Because if they do, maybe the United States will just allow them to be slaughtered.
Look, people get slaughtered all over the world. I mean, there's so much policing you can do, especially us as a small country. What do you want us to do? We're not going to send our guys to fight the Turkish people there, or the Iraqi troops, or the crazy Syrian Shiite, to save the Kurds. I mean, how it will look that, we're asking help from the world, but we're sending army out of our country to do that. America did it in not much success all over, So we always have to fold out from Afghanistan, from Vietnam, I don't have to bring back all the bad memories, of after World War II. So you cannot police the world all the time. We do help as much as we can, and it's behind the scenes, so you don't see it too much. And that's how it is.
Well, on that one, I'll totally disagree with you on that one, because the United States, if it just maintained its presence, Turkey never, ever, ever would have messed with us. They never would have challenged us. They have nothing compared to us. I also wanted to ask you about the coronavirus. Why is Israel doing such a great job, and why aren't we? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, because Israelis are, first of all, mostly military people. So even for the 3 years, you have to say, yes, sir, no, sir. We really don't do too much. Like in America, I mean, when people were calling me sir, I used to say, Tzachi, don't call me Mefaked, commander, whatever. So it goes all the way up the rank, where we call Benji, and it can be a general, and we call him Benji or Rafi or whatever, Raful, Rafael Eitan, Raful. He said, call me Raful. The guy was from a kibbutz. He didn't want to be called, titles. But Israel, when they see, that things push to shove, they clamp down, and they really did it the right way. Nobody got out of the houses. Nobody was on the streets. It took 2 months even to talk to people with distance. I see my family that are very big and vast in Israel, maybe more than 50 people there. My sister have 9 grandchildren and everything. So, that everybody was missing everybody hugs and kisses and touch and everything. But as we got united for one time, as we say, and to fight the corona, and the 264 that died is one of the lowest numbers in the world on a 9-10 million people population, and not spreading it. And we shut off everything, and we suffer for it. Let's see how long it will take Israel to come back to what it was before.
But it's also the great scientists, isn't it? That Israel has lots of doctors and scientists and a lot of intelligence to know how to deal with these things. Right?
Yes, we knew how to isolate.
And technology.
Yeah, we did checks, where people were checked themselves very quickly. And it was mainly isolation, right? Like stay home, don't spread it, and that's it. And they really did it. It was like the 100-meter, border. You cannot go more than 100 meters, which is like a few hundred feet, So it's like crossing the street or something like this. Even less in the beginning, we're not allowed to go out. So Israelis decided to stay home, watch a lot of Netflix and other Israeli shows. People, singers and everything, gave free concerts on the internet. A lot of people on Zoom. It was camaraderie, as we say. People got together, forgot their differences, and that's it. And we hope that it didn't spread. And so far, it's working. But we live here in America, so you see that places that did not do it or did not clamp down got suffered badly, and hopefully it won't continue.
Sharon, you want to open it up to questions, comments?
Yes, I have a lot of questions. I want to ask everyone if they have a question, if you want to put it into the Zoom group chat to me, the host, and I will read it out loud because we have a lot of people online, and I think that would work much better by me reading the questions. So at this point, the first question I have for Zahi is, was it helpful or hurtful to Israel when Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem?
So far, I don't see any harmful things. We had other countries that did it, including Guatemala. A couple of other countries moved their embassy, and many of them are considering. So that's a good news. Israel, Jerusalem is the capital. Usually, your embassy is in a capital, and they did have a consulate in East Jerusalem, still have it there. So I think it was a good move because the move was bold, and it shows that, look, let's call a spade, Jerusalem is the capital, even if people don't agree or you have disagreement on it, but since it's written, we go ahead with it. I don't see any harmful things in it.
I think it was a very helpful thing, but it was not helpful when two Christian pastors who both believe Jews are going to hell were chosen to speak on that auspicious occasion. But I agree with Zahi. Moving the embassy to Jerusalem, that was a really good thing to do.
Okay,
and long overdue.
The next question is it's a twofold question, Zahi, for you. How many Palestinians are under Israeli control, and how many would want to become or remain Israeli citizens?
Great question. Right now, under Israeli control, since we gave back Jericho and some other what they call Area 1 or Area A, so we have about 300,000 Palestinians that under Israeli control. They get all the services from Israel, from water to electricity. I just want to say that they don't contribute anything to the Israeli economy. They don't pay tax. They don't pay anything. So they can, and plus they get money from UNRWA, some other type of United Nations quasi government type of things. So it's a handout to them. And if we want to give them to Jordan, I'll say 90% we say, la, we don't want to. We don't want. We want to stay under Israel. We want to be Israeli citizens. That's what they want. They're afraid about, they know the minute there'll be a state, if they make something, we're going to fight them as a state against state. So they don't really want to lose this type of status that they are right now here. So even if the radicals say, yeah, we need our own land, we need our own capital, we need everything, it's bogus. And as I said in the beginning, the Palestinians didn't have election for many, many years. So really, we know that Abu Mazen or Abu Abbas, the leader, really has no control. He has no power over the Palestinians. They do really whatever they want, all the factions. So it's very hard to deal with someone that has no control on his own people.
Zahi, could you clarify under Israeli control? Like, do you mean living within the state of Israel and the Judea and Samaria and Gaza? Like, what are those numbers like? Do you know?
Well, in Israel proper, nobody really live, as the Palestinian, what we call, that lived there before 1967. So basically, they have to pass checkpoints to come to work in Israel. Don't forget that we're still giving hundreds and thousands of people, not 100,000, but thousands of people every day go to Israel to work and go back at night. And it's even from Gaza as we speak. We let them come. They help with construction, they help with agriculture. Some of them are bad apples, but our guys working very early in the morning, like from 4 o'clock, you already have buses that bring them to the border, and they have to be vetted one by one. Very grueling and tough for 18, 19-year-old kids, to be there with full gear, and any minute somebody can jump on you with a knife or with a hand grenade or whatever. So you have to understand this is a daily event. Think of what will happen here if you have to pass through going to anywhere, like that. It was bad enough now to stand online to get into Publix or Walmart, with your mask and everything. Can you imagine people hostile coming in and getting angry at you? So Israel don't want to control anybody, actually. We control them just because they're unruly, some of them, and they will want to be surprised. And that's what it is. We let them work, we pay them, and actually people were complaining that at the time when the closure, they wanted the Palestinians to come and work with us. A lot of kibbutzim using them, everybody really. So, it's good. We hope that through that we can make peace. When they come and see how Israeli live and how they treat them nicely, they give them the food, they see that they're okay, they worry about their families, the employers, the employers treating them good. So hopefully maybe through that, help them out to make substantial living, to help them. So, it's one way of maybe going toward peace, is giving them employment and giving them dignity.
Thank you, Zaki. Another question, where are the possible friendly Arab neighbors? Are there any?
None. Unfortunately, the friendly Arab neighbors are kind of an oxymoron to say, it's very sad actually. There are some intelligentsia and people that will do it, but even the Knesset members, the Arab Knesset members, a couple of them are very radical, talking against Israel in the Knesset. I mean, this is like, you're talking about democracy, this is it, you won't be able to do it anywhere, even in the USA, you'll be out. So they try to, but even their own people hush them. So it's a problem. We don't expect too many people to love us. That's how it looks right now.
Tzachi, with Saudi Arabia, I hear that Saudi Arabia is coming a little closer to Israel behind the scenes, and that they realize that Israel is stable compared to like Iran, to try to help them deal with the radicals. Is that correct? That Saudi Arabia and Israel are coming a little closer together as far as behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's we actually was not too much behind the scene. They have a couple of the, Prince Abu al-Walid. He came and talked to Israelis, even met the chief of staff. Let's say quickly about Saudi Arabia. It's about 2.5, 3 million people, mostly the Alawis, and they belong to Ibn Saud, that was really a friend of Israel, the grandfather of the king now. And King Fahad before him also did it well. They are very under attack from Shiite Muslims that want to take over, namely Iran. And it's very, very dangerous. So we try to help them as much as we can, because also United States, have stakes in Saudi Arabia. Now because the oil is very cheap, the Saudis are really hurting in a way, and all the plans that they want to help the population, it's in halt. Nobody is doing much. At the time, even the Saudis never had even tax. They didn't have to pay income tax, everything. Now they're taxing the people almost on everything, because they see that their revenues are really falling down fast.
So Tzachi, isn't it true then that perhaps of all the Arab countries respond to that question, that Saudi Arabia could be a country that in the future could make peace with Israel, especially if their economy is hurting and they can't control other countries because other countries need their oil so much? Isn't it possible they might want to work with Israel to stave off terrorism and to help their economy?
I'm sure they would love to do that. Don't forget that the two holy sites of Islam is Mecca and Medina that are in Saudi Arabia. And when they have the Hajj, actually right now they don't go anywhere, and they have the Ramadan this month in Israel, or the Arabs are fasting in the evening until the early morning. Weird way to fast, a lot of Yom Kippur every night. But the Saudis are really now in a bind, and they're afraid that if they do the wrong move, they'll be overrun from the borders, and it's a very small army and everything, and it will be very hard for them to defend themselves, and they can fall very, very quickly. So it's mainly desert, Yeah.
Tzachi, we have several more questions I'd like to get to before the end of the program. This one's rather long, okay? I have always believed that Yasser Arafat would never make peace with Israel, because that would mean that he would have to actually govern the Palestinians and take the responsibility of a real leader. That would end the victimhood strategy, and he could not tolerate that. In addition, I believe in the Sadat rule, he who makes peace with Israel dies. Arafat saw that Sadat was assassinated, and he believed that would be his fate if he made peace with Israel. What are your thoughts on this?
That's true. Sadat was assassinated a year or two after the peace talks. They had actually a big so-called victory every October. They have the victory parade in Cairo. And believe it or not, the people that were marching and saluting him, some of them have guns with real bullets, and they shot him right there, killed other people on this particular stage that all the dignitaries were there, and they assassinated Sadat, like telling any other leader that will make peace with Israel will get the same thing. Arafat mentally was not really able to control the Palestinians themselves, and the question is right. He was afraid that he won't be able to do it. He always looked like a victim and portrayed like a victim. He had some other type of things behind the scene. We are not going to go into it now, that our Mossad knew about him and what he did and what he was doing. So we won't go into that. You can always find it somewhere in the darknet. But Sadat, Arafat was not ready to lead the Palestinian people, and he was also afraid on his life, and that's why he didn't take what we offered him, which was almost everything they wanted. If he did it, today we will not be talking about it whatsoever. We go and visit Ramallah, and we go and visit, Joseph Tomb and Aaron, places like that if we want to. So, the Palestinian, it's like we said, there's some people say that it will never be peace, I hope they're wrong. But so far, they are right. There's no one to talk to, and no one to want to talk to us. It's like you'll have to leave the country, Israelis, if you want peace, go to Uganda, go to, I don't know, Tennessee, somewhere, maybe we can get the peace of America, Montana, I don't know. There's a vast country here that nobody lived there. And I've been all over, so I know. But we need a big river and we need a lake. That's all. That's what Israel needs. A river and a lake, maybe a bit, but that will be tough to get in America. But Midland somewhere. So, what can I say? I mean, we always talk about peace. We want peace. Shalom is one of the most spoken words in Hebrew in Israel. Everybody says shalom from morning to night, even if they don't, recognize it. But that's the word that's flying a lot. Hi, shalom, litraot. That's what it is. Shalom is the word. Peace, goodbye, hello, encompassing our essence, of Israel. And that's it.
Thank you, Zaki. The
Hey,
next
Safi,
question.
it sounds like you're the one who's
Rabbi.
giving sermons now, Safi.
Rabbi, the next question is for you.
Yes.
Okay. Who gave Israel their abilities to win wars against unreasoned, impossible odds? Wait a minute, I gotta read this again. Who gave Israel their ability to win wars against unreasoned, impossible odds? Numbers of armed enemies over the years. Who endows Israeli scientists, doctors, and tech experts and business acumen with their abilities to excel, even with so long of a history of persecution and victims of attacks against Jews in Israel?
That's a very good question.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, the indomitable spirit of the Jewish people, the values that we've learned from our ancestors, the traditions, the courage, the strength, and the fact that the Jewish people believe that we have a holy mission to make the world better gives us the strength and the ability to make sure that we're going to be in this world and survive and thrive because we have a purpose. People with a purpose are strong and they survive and they're invigorated. And the Jewish people, we have purpose. Now, if the questioner is implying it must be God who's watching over us, God must be the reason why we survived and why Israel's doing so well. If that is the case, then the questioner would also have to accept that God also is the one who allowed the Jewish people to be slaughtered in the Holocaust. He must have been sitting there with arms folded watching. He must have been watching the Inquisition, the Crusades, the pogroms, the 2,000 years of misery. If you want to say that God is responsible for the Jewish people being in Israel, you got to take the good with the bad. I don't conceive of such a power. There's no evidence for it, and it offends my sense of goodness to think that there would be any good power up there watching all of this. So that power comes from the Jewish ideals and the Jewish people, and the Jewish state owes its existence to the Jewish state of mind.
But answering the question that the guy and also his assessment is right, used to. But as we saw, the 3 minutes videotape, video in the beginning about Israel, the Israeli army. First of all, like we have the immediate ancestors, like my parents, my grandparents, Everybody was there. They did it for us. We do it for them. We do it for our children. Hopefully our children will not have to go to war. We always want that, you know, like my parents thought, that's it. We got war of independence. Now we have Shalom al Israel and everything is good. But it didn't happen. We had like 4 or 5 wars since then, you know, and I've been in like 3 or 4 of them, which is ridiculous, you know, and I'm still a young man. And kind of. So basically, but you're right, we go to Bar Kokhba, we go to Yehuda Maccabi, we go to the Hashmonite, we go to Deborah, the Nevi'ah, we go to strong women in the Jewish history, Shlom Tzion Malka in the Hashmonite time, you know, where the Maccabim. We're very strong women and men that carry on and show by example that the guy's not afraid to get killed under a big elephant with a, you know, big army there, and you go underneath and do it, like El Azar, son of Matityahu, and some other type of heroic stories. Sure, we lost all those wars, that's true. We lost, and don't forget, unfortunately, if we look at history, we have the first time at the King Shlomo and David, King Solomon, King David, Shaul and everything, the kingdom of Israel lasted 72 years. You know, then we went to exile. We came back from exile, Babylon, go back to the Hashmonaim and everything. Israel had also independence for 72 years. Then we lost, right, to the Syrian, Greeks and everything, right? We have the temple and everything. Again, we went to exile, you know, to Persia, to whatever, until we came back from Koresh. So unfortunately, this is like the third coming, and we are 72 years old country. So we have 72 years twice, and we never made it after that. So these few years is very, very volatile. With all the technology, with all the science, still the numbers and odds are against us, as I illustrated in the beginning, how small Israel army and might vis-a-vis all our people around us. And if like tonight, in the middle of the night, all those guys, the crazy ones, gonna push all the buttons of all the missiles, we're gonna be in a very, very big trouble. You know, very big. I don't know. I always have this type of processes, and people say, no, don't talk that way. You know, I scare them, you know. I said, look, we have to be realistic. We hope we have answers to it, you know, but it will be very tough to answer thousands and thousands of missiles coming at you in 15 minutes. And by the time we wake up, all the enemies around us will just run over everything. It's a dark type of prophecy. I usually don't like to say it, but since we are all open to everything and we talk about everything, I want to be to tell you that nothing is for sure, and we really have to be watchful. The only thing we can do here from America is help whomever today is ruling Israel and the ruling party, no matter what political are, but we still want the shalom of Israel, and we want really that when we go there, we'll be safe. We want to visit our homeland. Who knows what will happen here? Maybe all of us now that watching us, each other, and smiling and living pretty in the houses, maybe one day it won't be that safe. Maybe not in our lifetime, but our children, our grandchildren. So they say, oh yeah, let's go to Israel. It's about time. So they have to do the exodus from America, from Europe, from Africa, wherever Jews are. So, you know, we have to be careful about our little land that is really our, you know, our haven or survival place. If push come to shove, we always have Israel, and we always want to have it, and not be a small country of only Tel Aviv and the little corridor to Jerusalem, like it was way back then. And that's really not much we can say. But
Zachi, I have another question. This one's about annexation. It's from 2 different people. I'm going to read it together because it goes together. In your opinion, are most Israelis for or against annexation? Then the next question is, do you think that the new government in Israel will announce soon of the annexation of parts of the West Bank? And if the answer is yes, what will be the ramifications of doing this act?
Okay, so let's start not from the end, but from the beginning of the question. Yes, most Israelis are looking for annexation for many reasons, especially for safety reasons to annex it. Otherwise, if it's no annexation, at some time you have to give it back to some authority of Palestinian. You know, you cannot put them in what we call Zone B forever. So annexation, most people agree to it. Maybe they won't agree to go to war for it, but right now they agree to it. European Union, as we just heard about Belgium and Luxembourg and France, they're trying to avert it even before we decide to do it. They're warning us that it will be ramification and then kind of a boycott or whatever it is, you know. So Israel is used to it, and I don't think that country like this can really threaten us. We still have friends in the EU, in the European Union, like Germany, Austria, Switzerland. To some extent, we have a good relationship with Spain now and Portugal, Holland. So we have to see. I don't know if it's good or bad myself, because I don't live there right now. So, you know, I don't like, I always tell to people, look, I live in America, you know, so I cannot really tell you what to do. Israelis, by the way, cannot vote in the Israeli election if they're not in Israel proper at the same time, unless they work for, you know, diplomatic missions, or maybe they are in merchant marine. So I cannot vote for the Israeli votes. It's not like you can go in Jerusalem to American embassy and vote for America. Israel cannot do that. You want to vote, you're Israeli citizen, even if you have another citizenship, fly to Israel and vote right there. So that's another way of, and I agree to it. People say, no, we need to, we went to the army. So no, we don't need to, we don't live there now. We are not suffering, we are not doing stuff, we are not going to Miluim, reserve duty, you know, so we have no right to tell them how to live there. And most people that live here most probably will be right wing, right? Because we are not sending our family to war. So hey, let's get them, you know. So there's a few things like this. I think that the annexation will be good, because we need those, you know, this particular land, because otherwise it's very fragmented. If you look at annexation territories, you see that Israel proper is not proper, as we say. And we want to have this type of land just as a buffer zone. That's what we need. We need a buffer zone. We cannot, that's what people were against another Palestinian state and said, how can you have another state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean? You know, it's already 20 miles wide. What are you going to take out of it? So it's very volatile, very.
Another question is, does Israeli natural gas discoveries in the Mediterranean change the geopolitical nature of the Near East?
Yes, we are actually, we have so much gas that we're actually exporting gas, including to Egypt. They're one of our biggest customers. And right now we're working on a gas line under the Mediterranean that will go to Cyprus. And from there it will continue through a couple of Greek islands to Europe. That will be tremendous. Yeah, definitely it's working very well and putting a lot of money into Israeli coffers. Also, don't forget that we are #1 in the world in the desalinization of salt water into drinking water. We're actually exporting water and selling water to Jordanian and some other places. And we, you know, 60 or 70% of Israeli drinking water are now come from the Mediterranean, which is unlimited as last I've seen it. So there's a lot of water with salt, and we can make a lot of water without salt and without any other, you know, contamination. So that's a good one. So we try to do it. Of course, solar energy is very big, wind for some sort, but solar is big. We were exporting solar all over the world, solar energy. We used to have solar energy, free hot water in Haifa from the 60s, you know. I had a house with a flat roof, so they can put those things on it. So yeah, and I was myself involved in America with bringing a lot of sun collectors to Texas, where I went to school there in Houston. So we did that too. People were marveling, you know, with the hot water coming from the sun, you know, burning your fingers, you know. So yeah, Israel trying to be self-sufficient, because im en anili mili. If I'm not for myself, who will, you know? So, you know, when we'll be maybe isolated for whatever reason, mostly political, we want to be self-sufficient, and we still will have the world. And we send the medical everywhere. Something happen, our Hatzalah guys and some other type of groups will be there. And if Israeli fall from a cliff in Peru or somewhere in the Himalayas, we send experts to bring them, you know, and we save no money to do that, you know. So we're here to help. So, you know, so people respect it, you know, but politics can ruin even the best people's mind, you know. That's unfortunately.
Sharon, I just want to mention that Netanyahu said that climate change is as grave a threat to Israel as the Arabs and the surrounding nations. And they realize that Israel could be driven under the sea by climate change. And they are doing like a Manhattan Project. They are galvanizing the greatest scientists and the most brilliant people to try to figure out a way to solve this problem. And he's right, they're doing it through solar energy, desalinization. If Israel could achieve alternative energy through solar power, it would not only save the planet, it would cripple the economy and it would destroy the wealth and the malicious influence of the surrounding nations like Iran and Saudi Arabia. And their oil would be worthless. So it's really something that liberals and conservatives should join together, and the United States and Israel, to come up with an alternative energy to carbon. And Israel is just the country to do it, and working with the United States. I also wanted to say to the woman who said, what is it that caused the Jewish people to be in Israel? Really, it was Jewish solidarity. It was all the Jewish people joining together and working together and not dividing up over parties or factions or religious denominations. It was the Jewish people all joining together behind a dream. Im tirtzu and zo agadah. And that same thing can help with alternative energy or anything when we join together. And that's why it's important that we unify.
Zaki, oh, I'm sorry.
Solidarity is the word, right? Solidarity is an old word actually that's being used by unions and everything. But solidarity, that's what it is, and camaraderie. So, you know, we have to be, you know, brothers of arms and brother of peace and brother of everything. So, you know, you have to take it both ways, you know, lo midubshech and lo meuktzeh. So, you know, you want the honey, but you might get the sting from the bee. So you have to be ready to do it. It can sting a little bit, but maybe the honey is much better to have it now, even with a couple of stings, and know that we're achieving some things, especially Israeli technology, of course, all over the world, from internet to anything, technology in your car, technology, everything you have in your hand, the phone, the computer, has something to do with it. My niece Orna was working for Intel Israel. They made the Pentium 3 and 4 and everything, and other stuff in technology. You know, what you have there are all kind of other apps on your phone are Israeli made, you know, the traffic and everything. So, you know, we're trying to help the world and help ourselves. And if we'll do that, most probably, we like to be loved. What can we say? Israel needs love from the world. And, you know, it's not enough for us to be loved by another 10 million Jews around the world, or 8, or whatever they're counting now. But we want to be loved by the Goyim, by the Gentiles, so they'll understand that, you know, we gave them the book, but we also give them the way of living to improve life everywhere in the world. So that's what Israel is doing. And, you know, we try to send the love through help.
That's
Love you all.
Very nice. The next question says, and I think that's going to have to be the last for the evening. What is Israel's relationship with China? And what role, if any, is China playing in the parties making peace in the Middle East?
Israel and China, we have some things that people don't like it. You know, even Pompeo was right now. Our big minister from America flew to Israel for 1 day. He was not talking too much about annexation. He was talking about Israel relationship with China, which there are two ways of looking at it. Israel, of course, need the Chinese money and Chinese, not know-how, but the Chinese numbers are big. And we try to do some things. America doesn't like it because they think that the Chinese going to steal the Israeli technology like they did in the United States and use it against us, all of us in the future. So there's two ways of looking at it. The Chinese build a couple of tunnels, big tunnels, where they build very quickly. You know, they're like half of the time that it took us to build one tunnel, they did it in more than double time, very quickly. You know, the tenacity and work ethics are very, very good. You know, we know that, right? Chinese people can work hard and they fulfill their obligations. But we have to be careful what type of technology we give them. And like here, you know, they're in the labs, they're in every college, they're from Harvard to the smallest schools in the nation. They aligned with China. They're being sent by China to go to high institutions. I remember when I went to school, the dean list had like at least 5 Chinese out of 10 were Chinese people that got, you know, the best, highest grades, because they just study 24 hours a day. They won't go to any parties. They won't do anything. A bag of rice, and that's it. They're not coming out the whole weekend. And then they ace everything. And that's the Chinese people. They gear and they're being educated to succeed, no matter what. That's no matter what.
Sharon, before we conclude, I just want to mention something. There are a fair amount of Jews in China. You might not know they're known as Orientas. And also, I wanted to thank Tzachi for sharing his education and knowledge with us. And we could go on for a long time. I'm recommending that we do this again. We'll reconvene again. He's a great source of information. And also, he really is an example of what we're all about at L'Dor Va-Dor. We're trying to bring people together and unite the political parties, unite the different branches of Judaism, all under one roof, and to stop being so partisan and divided. And Tzachi does a great job of that, and we're lucky to have him. And he also helps me a lot with the intricacies of the Hebrew language. So I'm very grateful for him being here, and I encourage everyone, if you want to share your thoughts with us, come up with an idea for another discussion or something, we're glad to hear from you. We welcome everyone of all different denominations, non-Jews as well, to advance the Jewish cause, because what Tzachi said is right. Unity is the strength of the Jewish people, and we need to try to overcome the barriers and use religion to build bridges of understanding and knock down walls of separation. I thank you so much, Tzachi, for fighting for Israel and also for helping to educate our people here.
Thank you all. Okay. Thank you, Tzachi, for your candor, your knowledge. You're wonderful. Thank you so much for spending the evening with us, and Rabbi Barry, the same. Thank you all. We had an enormous amount of people online tonight, and I think it was very, very interesting, and I hope everyone thinks as well. I'm sorry we did not get to everyone's questions. We did have a lot of questions in the chat room, but I thank you all. If you want to be on our mailing list, go to our ledorvador.org website, and you can sign up to get on our mailing email list, which is The Voice, which comes out a couple times a week. And that way you can know when we're going to have another program like this. We have a Shabbat service. We have a Shabbat service every Friday night. Go to ledorvador.org and click on the link to watch our virtual Shabbat service. And following that at 8:30 p.m., we have Shmooze and Zoom with an online interactive where nobody will be muted. We'll all be allowed to talk, not at once, but singly. Thank you again from L'Dor Va-Dor with love, and be safe and be healthy. Thank you.
Shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.